Hi, yes, welcome to part 11 of my musical analysis of Sondheim's musical Sweeney Todd. At this point, we covered most of the important heavy analytical stuff. However, we're only a fourth into the musical, so we'll keep going. And this video will be a bit more ambitious. I'm going to review everything and recap the previous 10 videos. Firstly, we looked at the beginning of the medieval song the Dies Irae, meaning the Day of Wrath. Since being written, it has been associated with death, vengeance, and justice. It has been used in the classical world by many famous composers, and it is still prevalent today in movies and other musicals, which is why Sondheim decided to incorporate the Dies Irae into this very appropriate musical. There are several important features of the Dies Irae. Firstly, all the notes are closely spaced and very near each other. Characters like Todd and Mrs. Lovett are more associated with the theme of death in this musical compared to the other characters in the show, such as Anthony, Joanna, or even Toby, which we'll see later in the next video. This is why most of Todd's and Mrs. Lovett's melodies are spaced really closely, while the other characters feature melodies and chords that are far apart with wide intervals. Additionally, the first four notes of the Dies Irae are very distinct. First, there is a back and forth motion of just one step, and then a large leap to another note. Sondheim uses variations on that. In all of these examples, it is an inverse of that four-note motif. The last note, instead of going down, it goes up. And not only with the Dies Irae does Sondheim evoke death. He uses tritones, or what is known in music as the devil's interval, which is exactly a separation of 6 half steps. Since the early ages, singing the interval of a tritone was largely avoided because of its restless dissonance. Sondheim also uses descending chromatics. This descending chromatic motif stems from the 16th century, called the lament bass. In addition, he uses the feeling of the passing of time with the Westminster chimes. Everything is very well crafted, even the journey Sondheim brings us on is very well formulated. Like My Friends, which brings us from the low range to the high range at carefully calculated points. But what is most striking is how themes weave in and out. Sondheim doesn't believe in reprises, but instead utilizes motifs and pastes fragments here and there. Back in video 7 I mentioned that I might make a timeline that shows all the motifs and where they recur throughout the show. Something like this. But since then I found out somebody had beaten me to it. Stephen Banfield made a timeline of all the motifs and reprises in his 1993 book, Sondheim's Broadway Musicals, and here it is. At first it might be difficult to understand, but once you do understand it, it might be difficult to actually read. So I added numbers and lines to make it a bit easier. Well, I'll try to explain how to read it. On the top we have the page numbers. That thing that says app between 100 and 120 means the song is found in the appendix of the score, because the Joanna song the judge sings is an optional cut from the show, and for the most part the songs are progressing in order. But take the Ballad of Sweeney Todd for instance, which recurs several times throughout the show. Instead of listing every single time that happens, it is just shown once and where it appears again. First reprise here, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and the 7th and very last reprise here. And when this one is in parentheses, that merely indicates that this isn't an exact reprise. In this instance, the accompaniment motif is being quoted here.
There was a barber and his wife.
Or for No Place Like London, it comes back here at the beginning of Ah Miss.
I have sailed the world.
Now the next part of this chart are the motifs. Banfield lists 13 distinct motifs. Some of them have more than one element to them, which is why we have 15 numbers. We have the Lucy theme.
And my Lucy lies in us.
The Judge's Joanna motif, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Joanne, so
The Alms theme. The Dies Irae.
what happened then? Well, that's the play, and he wouldn't want us to give it away.
The ballad accompaniment. Anthony's Joanna motif,
I feel you.
the Nemesis theme, aka Sweeney's theme, the Green Finch and Linnet Bird melody,
Green finch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing?
Look at Me melody, which I argued was an extension of the Sail the World motif,
Look at me.
Green finch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird,
Look at me.
several different bells. I believe number 10 is the London motif, 11 is the Westminster chime, and I don't know what 12 is. Maybe when I buy the book I could give you an answer, but it occurs somewhere near the end of Not While I'm Around.
But there's no place like London.
The Mask Ball, the humming motif, which we haven't gotten to yet, and finally the City on Fire melody, which we haven't gotten to yet.
City on fire, rats in the grass, and the lunatics yelling in the street.
These motifs are then indicated where they belong in the score. For instance, we find Lucy's motif, the Joanna's motif, and the Green Finch melody near page 1, which is the prologue, which we haven't talked about yet. Sometimes it is in parentheses, which means once again it is an incomplete recurrence of the motif. For instance, we have the Green Finch in parentheses here. This correlates to this part in the score while dialogue is happening. It is merely a quotation of this, which the flute is vamping. I found this timeline helpful because it shows a different interpretation of motifs. For instance, at the end of No Place Like London, we hear this.
But surely we will meet again before I'm off to Plymouth.
Oh, you'll find me if you want to. Going around Fleet Street, I wouldn't wonder.
We of course have the accompaniment for the ballad, but then we have this melody over it. I originally thought it might be Sondheim quoting Anthony's Joanna, but I brushed it off thinking it was just a coincidence. But Banfield indicated that as the Joanna motif, so it reaffirmed my thoughts. All these motifs are interconnected. One thing I talked about in the past 4 videos is this recurring motif. Different variations of this motif makes up several subsequent songs.
He had this wife, you see, pretty. So they nearly shipped the port lighter off.
Green finch and linnet bird,
Look at me, miss. Oh, look at me, please.
that's Joanna. This pretty little woman.
These themes end up showing a connection between all of these characters, Anthony, Joanna, the beggar woman, and Lucy, who is actually the beggar woman. Additionally, there are many instances when different motifs of different characters are interwoven to create something new. Like at the end of the song Ah Miss, in which we have the Ah Miss melody with the Green Finch accompaniment, and finally the Sail the World melody together.
At me.
Green finch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird,
Look at
Another technique Sondheim uses is merely dropping clues here and there. For instance, the beggar woman sings this.
How would you like a little muff, dear? A little jig, a little bounce around the bush.
But then we hear the same thing in Poor Thing when Mrs. Lovett is singing about Sweeney's wife, Lucy. Bam! And if you were listening close enough, we can conclude that the beggar woman is Lucy. Sondheim drops hints like this all the time. Not only through the plot does he tell the story, but through music and notes. That's all for this lengthy video. I'd also like to take this moment to pay tribute to 2 of the greatest Judge Turpins whom have recently passed. Edmund Lindeck, who originated the role on Broadway. Lindeck played the judge in many subsequent tours and productions, and continued to play the judge for many decades. He also originated Cinderella's father in Sondheim's Into the Woods. Secondly, I'd like to pay tribute to Alan Rickman. In addition to his legendary roles in Die Hard, Harry Potter, and many others, he played the judge in Tim Burton's 2007 Sweeney Todd adaptation. Thank you.